The morning after my wedding, I expected to wake up to a lifetime of happiness. Instead, I woke up to a phone call that completely shattered my reality. It was the private clinic where my new husband and I had both gotten checked out before our marriage. The doctor lowered his voice to a terrified whisper. "We found something very strange, and you need to see it for yourself. Come in right away, and come alone. Whatever you do, don't say a single word to your husband." My heart stopped as I looked at him sleeping peacefully beside me. I slipped out of the house, gripping my steering wheel in total panic. Now, sitting in this sterile office, the doctor has just slid a confidential file across the desk. Looking at the shocking truth on these pages, I realize the man I just married is a dangerous stranger. My name is Ava, and I am 29 years old. If you had told me yesterday that my life was a beautifully constructed lie, I would have laughed in your face. Yesterday, I was walking down the aisle in a custom lace gown, staring into the warm, hazel eyes of Julian Vance. Julian was everything a woman could dream of, a brilliant, charming, and impossibly attentive businessman who had swept into my life like a whirlwind and captured my heart completely. Our wedding day was an absolute fairy tale, a lavish celebration filled with clinking champagne glasses, tearful toasts from my family, and a romantic first dance under a canopy of twinkling lights. When the night finally came to an end, we collapsed into bed at our new home, completely exhausted but blissfully happy, eager to begin our forever together. But forever lasted less than 8 hours. The next morning, the bright, golden sunlight was just beginning to peek through the heavy velvet curtains of our bedroom. Julian was still sleeping peacefully beside me, his steady breathing the only sound in the quiet room. Suddenly, my phone buzzed violently on the nightstand. I reached out, trying not to disturb him, and answered. It was the private clinic where Julian and I had both gotten thoroughly checked out just 2 weeks prior, a standard requirement for modifying my family's trust expansion. But the voice on the other end wasn't the polite receptionist. It was the lead doctor, and his voice was a terrified whisper that instantly froze the blood in my veins. "We found something very strange," Dr. Vance whispered, his voice trembling through the receiver. "And you need to see it for yourself. Come in right away, and come alone. Whatever you do, don't say a single word to your husband." I sat frozen, staring at the phone as the line went dead. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked over at Julian, who shifted slightly in his sleep, a peaceful smile playing on his lips. Slipping out of bed with quiet, trembling movements, I threw on a trench coat and grabbed my car keys. I didn't even leave a note. 10 minutes later, I was gripping my steering wheel in a total panic as I sped toward the downtown medical center. The sterile smell of the clinic lobby usually calmed me, but today, it felt completely suffocating. The receptionist didn't ask me to sign in. She simply pointed toward a private back office. When I stepped inside, Dr. Vance closed the heavy door behind me and locked it. He looked exhausted, his face completely drained of color. Without speaking, he slid a thick manila folder across the mahogany desk. "Ava, the routine genetic and blood profiles you submitted for the family trust came back from the lab this morning," he said, his voice entirely flat. "The DNA profile of the man you married yesterday does not match any official records for Julian Vance. In fact, the real Julian Vance passed away 5 years ago in Colorado." The room seemed to spin violently, the sterile white walls blurring into a dizzying smear. I stared down at the documents, my fingers trembling so hard the paper rattled in my hand. "That's impossible," I stammered, shaking my head in flat denial. "I've been with him for a year. I know his family, his business associates. I know him." Dr. Vance shook his head grimly, pointing to a certified death certificate and a facial recognition comparison sheet. "The real Julian Vance died in a tragic skiing accident. The man living in your house used a stolen identity and impeccable deep cover forgery to rewrite his past. He is actually Thomas Finch, a high-level corporate fraudster who escaped federal custody 2 years ago. I choked back a sob, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. Thomas Finch had targeted me, orchestrating a perfect whirlwind romance solely to gain legal entry into my family's multi-million-dollar estate. "We've already quietly alerted federal authorities," Dr. Vance warned, leaning forward and lowering his voice to a razor-sharp whisper. "But you cannot confront him, Ava. If this imposter realizes the clinic has flagged his medical records, or that his cover is blown, he will panic. Men like him don't just run, they eliminate liabilities. For your own safety, you must walk back through that front door, look him in the eyes, and pretend absolutely nothing has changed." My chest tightened with pure terror. I had to go back home and play the role of a blissfully happy bride to a cold-blooded criminal. Walking back into our house was the hardest thing I had ever done. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around and run as fast as I could, but I forced my shaking legs to move. As the front door clicked shut, Julian emerged from the kitchen, wearing a soft gray sweater and holding a freshly brewed cup of coffee. He smiled, that warm, breathtaking smile that had once made my heart melt, but now it made my skin crawl with pure horror. "There you are, sweetheart," he said softly, stepping forward to press a gentle kiss against my forehead. "I woke up and found you gone. Is everything okay?" I forced a bright, cheerful smile to my face, though my teeth were practically chattering. "Just a quick morning errand, honey," I lied smoothly. "I needed to pick up some special ingredients for our first breakfast together." He nodded, completely unsuspecting, and walked back toward the master bathroom to take a shower. The second the bathroom door closed and the sound of rushing water filled the hallway, my artificial smile vanished. I moved with frantic speed. I slipped into his private home office and found his heavy leather briefcase resting on the floor beside the desk. Using the small key I had seen him hide in his watch drawer, I snapped the brass latches open. Inside, tucked beneath standard business portfolios, was a false bottom. My breath caught as I pulled out a collection of hidden offshore bank statements, a second passport featuring his face under a completely different name, and corporate legal contracts drafted to quietly liquidate my family's entire commercial estate the moment our honeymoon concluded. I quietly snapped the briefcase shut and slipped the key back into his watch drawer, my hands shaking so violently I nearly dropped it. I could hear the shower water stopping in the bathroom. Taking a deep breath, I smoothed down my coat, walked back into the kitchen, and began frying eggs as if my entire world hadn't just turned to ash. When Julian walked out, damp-haired and smiling, I served him breakfast and chatted about our upcoming honeymoon destination. I played the part of the blissfully ignorant, devoted newlyweds to absolute perfection. But the moment he left the house for an afternoon business meeting, I went straight to work. Instead of confronting him directly or running to the local police, which might cause him to flee, I secretly contacted my family's trusted corporate attorney and a high-level private investigator. Over a tense 3-hour meeting at a secure, undisclosed location, we formulated an airtight trap disguised as a routine family business celebration. As I sat across from this dangerous man at the dinner table later that evening, smiling while my heart hammered against my ribs, I wondered how far his lies had traveled. Follow my story until the end to see how I trapped him, and comment the city or country you are watching from so I can see how far this story has reached. Looking at him sip his wine, I suggested we host a formal dinner at my family's estate the following evening to officially sign over his managerial access to our trust. His eyes gleamed with unchecked greed as he eagerly agreed, completely unaware that he was walking straight into his own execution. The evening of the formal dinner arrived, and my family's estate had never looked more magnificent. The long mahogany table in the grand dining room was set with fine china and sparkling crystal, projecting the exact image of wealth and stability Julian had been hunting for. He sat at the head of the table, looking impossibly sharp in a tailored charcoal suit. His posture was radiating an arrogant, quiet triumph. He truly believed he was moments away from securing millions of dollars. My family members, who had been fully briefed on the situation by our private investigator, played their roles flawlessly, keeping the conversation light and celebratory. Finally, our corporate attorney stepped into the room, carrying a thick manila folder containing the legal documents. Julian's eyes gleamed with raw, unchecked satisfaction as the attorney slid the paperwork across the polished wood directly toward him. This document will finalize the transfer of managerial access for the entire family trust, the attorney stated calmly. Julian picked up a heavy gold pen, offering me a quick, reassuring wink before pressing the nib to the paper. He signed his name with theatrical flourish, completely convinced he had just won the ultimate game. But as he finished his signature, the attorney didn't take the papers back. Instead, he smoothly flipped the page over to reveal a hidden second document. "Now, please read the text on the back," the attorney said, his voice dropping all pre-verted warmth. Julian frowned, his eyes scanning the new page. In an instant, the smug, arrogant smile completely vanished from his face, and his skin turned a ghostly, terrifying shade of pale. He hadn't signed an asset transfer at all. He had just signed a comprehensive legal confession detailing his true identity, his federal escape status, and his fraudulent schemes. An airtight trap prepared directly by the federal authorities, who were already waiting quietly right outside the double doors. The double doors of the dining room burst open, and federal agents poured into the room before Julian could even drop the gold pen. The sheer shock on his face was unforgettable as the handcuffs clicked tightly around his wrists. The confident, charming husband I thought I knew was stripped away in seconds, leaving behind nothing but a pathetic, caught criminal. He glared at me with pure venom as they marched him out of my family's estate. But I didn't shed a single tear. I just felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over me. The entire nightmare was finally over. Within weeks, the fraudulent marriage was legally annulled, completely erasing any connection between myself and Thomas Finch. Today, I am standing on the balcony of my beautiful home, looking out at the peaceful horizon. I am no longer the naive woman who was easily blinded by a whirlwind romance. I am stronger, wiser, and completely independent, holding the keys to my own future. What would you have done if you got that terrifying phone call from the clinic the morning after your wedding? Would you have run, or would you have stayed to fight? Comment your thoughts below. I am leaving 2 other shocking, high-stakes story scripts on the screen right now that are channel favorites and will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until the very end.